Hello and welcome, everyone. I am JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about emotional eating and food addiction, and we are joined by Adam Shibely, who actually is interviewing me. So the show really is me, and he is asking me the questions because this was a show that we did for his community only, and I'm now just sharing it here. So I'm pretty amped up because I love working with Adam and I get very excited about ideas that I have. So I just wanted to warn you ahead of time. I'm not the calm interviewer here. I'm the one who's actually really excited about all the information that I'm giving you. Now, this week, if you're getting the show on the day it published, is the week of my Manifestation Boot Camp. And so I'm super excited about everybody coming and getting all the messages about people coming. And I'm beside myself with anticipation of an amazing weekend. And because it's coming up so soon, I'm not going to bother to try to get anybody else into it at this point, even though there still are some spaces left if you would like to come. And again, I'm still happy to help you get here. But I wanted to address that the topic today about emotional eating and food addiction, while we will kind of talk about it and deal with it a little bit during this weekend event, we're really going to do more with it at the January event at Releasing What Weighs You Down, which is being held at 1440 Multiversity. And you can come over to jjflazanes.com or, better yet, go to releasingwhatweighsyoudown.com. It will be the third one. I don't know if there'll be another one after this. So it could, again, be the last one. I know I say that, but I'm not doing another event till 2021. So if I do another Releasing What Weighs You Down, it won't be till January of 2021. So if you're interested in checking out that event, it's Lisa Thomas and I on 75 acres of redwood trees in Northern California. And I believe you fly into San Jose. Anyway, it's a gorgeous property with amazing food, and it's truly going to be an amazing experience. So if you want to check that out, it's releasingwhatweighsyoudown.com. Also, Adam has a lot of information that I don't share, obviously, in this interview because it's his information. But if you want to check out what else he has to offer, he's been on the show before, but go to millionpoundmission.com. Again, that's millionpoundmission.com. And of course, he is the host of the Million Pound Mission podcast. So I hope you enjoy today's episode.
All right, we have Professor JJ Flazanes, one of my good buddies. Thank you for participating and lending us your knowledge with Million Pound Mission University.
Well, thank you for asking me. I'm happy to report to duty, and I'm happy to impart wisdom and inspiration onto all.
As always, she'll drop the knowledge bombs is what that means, folks. That's what that means right there. All right, so we're talking emotional eating. This is a big deal topic because pretty much anybody that has struggled with that weight loss game, that mindset, this is a big deal that pops in, it rears its ugly head. So maybe we should just start off on kind of how you define the emotional eating experience. Like, what are the signs that, okay, because people get mixed up. I see a lot of mix up between food addiction and emotional eating. So maybe kind of differentiate a little bit. What are the similarities? What are the differences? And how do we actually define, like, oh, I am emotionally eating right now. This is happening.
Okay. I didn't realize that people had like thought that was a difference. To me, there is no difference between emotional eating and food addiction. I think people like to give their power away by saying I have an addiction. So let's take alcohol, for instance. Well, I'm an alcoholic. When you say I'm an alcoholic, there's several things energetically that happen. Number one, you have given the power to the alcohol. And you have said, I am not strong enough, or there is something in me that responds negatively to alcohol. Therefore, it's alcohol's fault. It's not alcohol's fault. Even if you have your brain chemistry is, let's say, super susceptible for reacting in a certain way. What it really is, all of it, whether it be a food addiction or emotional eating or any addiction. And that's where we get caught up in, and where I think the fitness industry really doesn't do any justice to how our mental, emotional life plays a role with a fitness or a nutritional program. We talk about what to eat, but we never talk about why we eat. We talk about what to do, but we don't talk about why fuels the what. So it's not about just changing out the habit. It's, have you seen the movie Grumpy Old Men?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember the scene where he puts it's Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, right?
Yep.
Okay. So
Yep.
Walter Matthau Jack Lemmon puts the dead fish in Walter Matthau's back in his seats, and he covers it up with newspaper, and it rots, and it sits there and it rots. And he's like, what is that smell? And he's spraying the spray on top of it, trying to make it smell better. He's hanging things from the rearview mirror, the fragrances, to try to make it smell better, which is what we all do with diet and exercise. We keep trying to put more fragrance on, covering up the real root of why it stinks in the first place. And the only way we're going to ever have lasting change is to remove the freaking fish. But first we have to find it. We have to know where it's coming from, and we have to understand what it is. So when it comes to addiction, I did a whole show on addiction. I've studied addiction for many years to help other people to understand my own impulses. Addiction isn't just something where it's a hard addiction, like a chemical, like tobacco. Most people that smoke or chew don't realize, they use the excuse that, well, I'm addicted, I'm chemically addicted. And there is a bit of chemical addiction to tobacco. But once it's out of the body, after 72 hours, it's no longer what's driving your need for it. It's an emotional need. So when we actually look at the science behind an addiction and why and how those things sort of play out. In fact, I just did my Release What Weighs You Down event, and we discussed the gut-brain connection, which I'm going to be doing a lot more of on my show, because the gut-brain connection can show you why most people who are on antidepressants shouldn't be on antidepressants, because we're medicating an idea when we are not getting the right neurotransmitters to our brain for even the right kind of chemical release in our brain that can help to balance some of our emotions. Now that's the chemical side. Now then there's the processing side. How, when something happens to us, a psychological, I call it the anatomy of emotion. And when I teach this in corporations, or when I teach this individually with people at my events, I go through what is an emotion, because most people just think that they just feel. Like they go out and they're like, oh, I feel bad. I didn't feel bad. Now I feel bad. It must be your fault, or it must be that thing. And that's sort of the unconscious understanding that a lot of us have about feelings. And that is absolutely not correct. Feelings don't just exist. Feelings are a result of an interpretation after you observe or think of something or visualize something. And even before that, our beliefs color that whole process. So there's this whole process that I go through, explain to people really how your emotions work. And so when you have a feeling, to be able to really process that. And so when it comes to emotional eating, and again, this is an external problem. It's not the food's fault. The reason why we have an addiction to anything, and it could be literally technology, being addicted to your phone, being addicted to chaos, being addicted to putting out fires. How many people do you know that are addicted to the story that they can't ever rest, or they can't take a break because their life is too crazy? They use it as like a martyrdom thing. Like, oh my God, you should.
Yeah. That's big with entrepreneurs.
Huge with entrepreneurs, which, when you look at why did any of us get involved in being an entrepreneur, it wasn't so that we could wear the stamp of tired, fatigued, overworked, and not having any fun. Everybody gets into this because they go, I want to have more freedom, I want to have more money, and I want to have more time. And so when you're not doing that, then you have to, basically say the excuse of why you're not living the perfect dream life you thought you would. And the excuse and the way to feel really good about that is to be like, oh, I'm so tired, I work so hard. So we have all these emotions, and when we aren't able to process and express them, for a lot of people are very uncomfortable with most of their emotions. Most people aren't even aware of their emotions. They don't know what it feels like in their body. They don't know what happens when they feel anxious. In fact, anxiety, I've done, a dozen shows on anxiety. Anxiety isn't even a feeling. Anxiety is a body sensation. Anxiety is energy that hasn't been expressed. So if I look at something and I worry or I'm afraid, and I don't process that, I don't problem solve it, I don't make peace with it, I don't look at it and figure it out, and I have this sort of jiggling going on in my body somewhere, stomach's in knots, maybe it's that your neck is tight, maybe it's that you can't sleep, maybe it's that your mind is racing, and you just know you don't feel good. What do you think you reach for to try not to feel that way? For a lot of people, it's food. Yeah. For some people, it's alcohol. For some people, it's smoking or tobacco. I had a boyfriend once years ago who was such a workaholic. I actually literally chased him down, like sat in a car with him and just didn't say a word. And because it was so obvious that he just run. He was like a runner. Like, I don't want to face it, so I'm going to run. And I'm not trying to pick on you men, but there aren't a lot of men that I think are representing healthy emotional processing. Yeah. There aren't really a lot of women who are representing it either. I'm trying to become a role model in this world to be able to neutralize and bring emotions down to the judgment that we've had in the past, that it's not okay for men to cry, or, showing emotion means you're weak, which is so not the case at all. Right. Having strength is really being able to face the fear or embrace the anger and choose to use it in a positive way. Our emotions, how I like to explain it to people that I think makes it a little bit more scientific. If I was to tell you this is your first time on the planet, and you have no idea what's going to happen for this calendar year. And let's say you come into the planet and it's springtime and there are fruits on the trees and flowers on the trees and the sun is out. And then all of a sudden, after the summer, the fall hits and the leaves fall. Can you imagine what you might think is happening to the earth if you didn't understand the cycles of growth and rebirth that we go through in our seasons? I mean, can you imagine the first time it ever happened and people didn't understand seasons? They might think, oh my God, the earth is going to die. We're going to die, right? But we understand cycles and seasons. Well, our emotions are cycles and seasons, and how we process emotion is cycles and seasons. And so taking the mystery out of, or the stigma out of the ability to feel angry or the ability to feel sad or fear without knowing, or with knowing and trusting, you're not going to die. You're not going to die because you have a fear. You're not going to die because you're going to express anger. That it's a very, very powerful energy. In fact, it's so powerful, I believe, and I know that we all make decisions about our life choices based on how we want to feel, whether it be avoiding a negative feeling or running to a positive feeling. So at the end of all emotional eating, all food addiction, all anxiety is a lack of processing tools, a lack of understanding, and sometimes a real just fear of feeling out of control. And probably one of the biggest addictions is that people feel they don't want to feel out of control, and their emotions make some people feel out, especially men, make them feel out of control. That if I cry, if I break down, that I won't be able to get back up again. But again, let's go back to the weather. Let's say a tornado is coming, or that there's a major hurricane or rainstorm coming. You also know it's going to pass. It won't be forever. So if we could understand emotions on a different level, to say embrace the energetic flow and processing that is part of our natural existence, then we develop a relationship that doesn't have us trying to avoid it. All we're doing in emotional eating and food addiction and anxiety is trying to avoid our feelings. Right. And what makes it worse is that we're actually not even problem solving it. So we are our own worst enemies because we never make it better. We never examine our thoughts or our beliefs as to, why do I even feel this way? Every negative thought and every negative feeling that you have, it's not every negative thought, but every negative feeling that you have is because there's a need that you have that's not being met. And I teach this work in every workshop I do, getting ready to bring it out to corporations across the country, major corporations, in their sales training, because it is and customer service training, because it's such a powerful idea that can really up-level everyone's experience, both in life as well as in customer service, as in sales, working with people. And it's really understanding that how to process emotions on a little bit more of a mental level, even though we have to balance out the two. So let me just take you really quickly through just sort of like the experience of what happens. Okay. So I'm looking at something. Yeah. Let's say I'm feeling really good, in which case I'm not actually looking at my thoughts or my emotions because I feel good. So why would I? But all of a sudden, oh, I don't feel good. Something just happened. What just happened? I saw something, or I had a thought. And then from that thought, I either told myself a story or I interpreted it in a way that made me feel bad. Okay. So is it the thought that made me feel bad? No, it's my interpretation that made me feel bad. So how do we work with this? First we have to understand what just happened. So what are the feelings that I'm having right now? It's a 3-step process. What are the feelings that I'm having right now? Well, I have fear and I have worry. Okay, you're feeling for it because you have a need that's not being met. So step 2 is to discover what need is not being met. And I don't have the sheet on me right now, but I have a needs and feelings list. And in the sections, the feelings, there's 100 different feeling words. Now, if I asked you, Adam, how many feelings exist, you probably could come up with 5, 10, right? But most of us have no vocabulary for that. We just know we're happy, we're sad, we're angry, or we're worried. So we go through the list and we figure out what, identify the feeling. Now, for some people, that is very freeing for them to just go, wow, this is how I feel. And all of a sudden there's a freedom that comes along with that. Like I didn't know that's how I felt. Wow, I have that feeling. And from there, sometimes that can, squash it and let it go and you release it and everything's good. Now you didn't solve the problem, but sometimes just identifying the feeling can help. Now, when it comes to emotional eating, or let's say food addiction, I would say, after working with many people over the years who have gone through therapies and worked one-on-one with people and groups on emotional eating, but didn't really get anywhere, it's because a lot of the times what they're doing is, again, that mental processing of their emotions. They're thinking about their emotions. They're analyzing their emotions, but that's not expressing or experiencing your emotions, right? It's like the diagnosis of the problem isn't necessarily the treatment of the problem. So when you're having an emotion, first and foremost, you want to be able to healthfully express that. So if it's, I'm feeling angry, we need an outlet for you to express your anger that, that feels good for you. So for me, I have a punching bag in the garage, although it's on the floor right now, but it was hanging up. And I would often go out and I box and I kickbox. And if I felt, anger, I recognized once when I was having an argument with my partner that I was really angry and I couldn't sleep. And I knew that if I tried to sleep, even though I knew I was so angry, like the anger energy was not going to go away. So I went outside and I punched the bag and then I started to cry. And then once the energy had been released, I could go to sleep. So I'm looking at it mechanically, but I have to express it. I have to get it out of me. Think of like an energy bubble that's in you. It's almost like gas, right? Like it has to leave you. You can't hold it in. You have to let it out. Otherwise, if you're holding it again, that's when we're eating or we're doing something. We're trying to push it down. And when you push it down and you keep pushing it down, it's only going to cause disease, more pain, and create anxiety. So again, there's the emotional processing part first. And once you start to look at your situations and your emotions and you start to understand and start to problem solve them, you're going to feel so much better about doing this process because you're going to trust your ability to solve it. And so that it goes away and it's not an issue. But then so there's the analytical side and then the feeling side. So I would recommend everybody who has anxiety. What would be great is to learn these tools first and foremost, but then past that is to get comfortable with expressing your feelings. Where does it show up for you? Do you get stomach aches? Do you have diarrhea? Do you have headaches? Do you have, stiff neck or shoulders? Does your back start to cramp up? What most people don't understand is that lower back pain, chronic lower back pain, is repressed rage. And while it may be fine that you go to the chiropractor and you work out and you have acupuncture, because I've done all of this, right? I don't have back pain, but you can do all the right things physically. And if you still have back pain, it's not a physical issue. I don't care if you have a bulging disc, because most of us have a bulging disc. That doesn't necessarily mean it creates pain. And that work is based on Dr. John Sarno's work, Healing Back Pain, who was a surgeon for 30 years on backs, came out of that realizing that, nope, this isn't physical, this is emotional. So anyway, it's a great book, Healing Back Pain, Dr. John Sarno. He's passed, but he's amazing. And he's not even, you think like he'd be woo-woo. The man is so boring to listen to. Like I like when I watch his video, because I expected him to be more like emotional, and he wasn't. He's like a dry doctor, but a dry doctor who realized after 30 years of doing the best freaking back surgeries on the planet that this is not a physical issue. This is emotional. Wow. So there's some proof to that. So we go through like experiencing your emotions, and there's processing. So I was on the needs list, right? So the needs list, the feelings are 100. There's 86 different needs. And again, most of us, our relationship to that word need, it might feel bad. Like, Are you saying I'm needy? Are you saying I'm dependent? Are you saying I'm weak? No. You have a need for air. You have a need for water. You have a need for shelter. You have a need for safety. You also have a need for play. You have a need for compassion. You have a need for contribution. You have 86 different human needs. And most of us are in denial about them because we don't think like that. We don't have the vocabulary for it. We've never been taught how to identify what our needs are. And when you start to problem solve your situation by identifying and having an awareness around, what am I feeling? Okay, I'm feeling this. Second step, what's the need that's not being met that's creating this feeling? Okay, once you get there, step 3 is, okay, what strategies can I create to get the feelings or to get the needs met? However, there's a caveat. What strategies can I take to get the need met that doesn't require anyone else to be different? And that's when the true work begins, to challenge your beliefs about how much power you have versus how much power you give away to others.
I love that.
Hence why I call myself an empowerment strategist, because too many people believe that they feel powerless, which is what depression is. Depression is powerlessness. When you have the belief that you are powerless and you can recognize and claim your power back, you won't be depressed. And there are different kinds of depression. There is a chemical depression, but most people aren't really having chemical depression. They're having lack of good neurotransmitter substrates in their gut that reach to their brain depression. They're having situational misunderstanding depression, where they're carrying a belief that's not true depression. Most people don't have chemical depression that needs drugs first and foremost. If you're going to go on drugs, in my opinion, and again, I'm going to do a whole series of shows on this because I'm super passionate about, I'm not opposed to medications if you have exhausted all the other things that contribute to your body creating your own substrates in the first place. If your diet is perfect, if your probiotic level is perfect, if your gut flora is perfect, if your mental capacity and understanding of the situation is on par, and you can tell me your part in all this, and from a spiritual side, from an emotional, psychological side, like what I just went through, if you can tell me all of that and we're still off, okay, then your chemistry is off and you need a little bit of help. Cool. But most people aren't doing that. Most people eat too much sugar. They're eating gluten. They're eating way too many carbohydrates. They have way too much insulin pumping through their system. And they're not producing serotonin, or they're taking too much melatonin. So now their chemistry is completely out of whack, and they're wondering why they feel bad. So you have to look at the whole picture first and say, there is a consequence to going on medication. The medication might help you get from point A to point B, and maybe you need that right now. Maybe something really tragic happened and you don't have these tools. You don't have these skill sets, but you need some help. Okay, but it's a bridge to get from point A to point B. It's not supposed to be the ride you take forever, so you don't kill your liver and your kidneys trying to flush out all these chemicals that you're digesting. And it's a crutch for not learning how to process your emotions. Because when you learn how to process your emotions, when you can go into truly healing whatever is eating you, life is better. Just like all over the place, life is better. There is no need to feel, I don't feel restricted in my life. And yet my diet compared to most people is what they would consider extremely restrictive, but it's not restrictive at all. I've been trying to get Doug to maybe eat better care of his health in certain ways. Not that he does a bad job, he does a great job. But when he came to the event and I put him in front of Jeannie and she was teaching about brain and gut health, and there was sudden now, I mean, there's been this, like, there are greens in every meal. There are, there's more, he said to me, we need to eat healthier. And I'm like, there's been no bread, way less gluten for him. I don't need it. And a lot more greens because, again, and he even put some butter. He put butter in his eggs, which I was like, yes, because of his brain. Because he gets it. If I eat good, my brain's better. My memory's better. I can think better. I don't have brain fog. And that's important to him. So again, if you're out there and you're thinking, I wish I could just get this right. Because that's what a lot of people think. If I could just eat the right diet, if I could just have the right things, I'd lose weight and I'd feel better. And while I agree with you, there are biochemical, let's back up for a second there's the emotional piece of food and then the chemistry of food. Yeah. I had a client once a guy that was like, he thought he was an emotional eater. He was an Overeaters Anonymous. He was going to therapy sessions. He was in a meditation group. He was in a support group. I mean, the man was like, he would come with the badge of, I am an emotional eater. And I'm like, okay, cool. Have you taken a food sensitivity test? And he's like, no. I'm like, I'll go back to Jeannie, ask for the food sensitivity test, take it. Okay, what happens? He comes out. Now, he was eating diet food. He was eating popcorn. He was eating whey protein.
Rice cakes. Was eating rice cakes? Probably.
He was eating yogurt, right? a lot of dairy. Well, guess what? Dairy sensitive. Removed the dairy, lost 16 pounds in 2 weeks and didn't have any cravings. And he went, oh, maybe I'm not an emotional eater. So there's a chemical response to the food that you eat that can produce what you think are cravings you might judge as emotional, which might not be. So there, when you're looking at, if you're someone who finds you have a lot of cravings, there's the chemical side, emotional side, which is why in my last book, The Invisible Fitness Formula, 5 Secrets to Release Weight and End Body Shame, which everybody can get a free copy of. It's why I positioned the 5 steps in the order that I did. If we clean up your diet first, if we look at your hormones third, we may alleviate any symptoms that you are assessing are emotionally based. And if we can get your body into a better balance, maybe it's not emotional. Now, maybe it is, but we're going to know for sure when we fix the chemistry in your body. And by the time we get to step 4, which is when we deal with emotions, we're going to know, are you calmer now that your diet's cleaned up and your chemistry lab is in a better balance? And if you're not, then it's emotional. And we need to go down that path to at least uncover where the issue really is, so that you're not like that guy who's walking around thinking, oh my God, I'm such an emotional eater. I'm an emotional eater. When really he was just sensitive to dairy, which caused cravings and caused him to hold water. So he lost 16 pounds in 2 weeks, right? Well, no, he was a big guy. He was a really big guy, so it was easy. But then all the cravings went away. Same thing for me and gluten. I gave up gluten and the cravings for food went away, like in the first 2 weeks. And I lost 6 pounds in 10 days. So we have to look at both of those things. But I would say that we often discount at a level that I think is a disservice to all of us. That if you're on a food program, you're on a diet, you're on an exercise program, and you haven't looked under the hood to find the dead fish, good luck, because you're just going to keep trying thing after thing after thing. If you truly are eating to numb your feelings, if you have anxiety, you say, oh, I have anxiety. It's not a disease, people. It's energy. It's in you. It needs an outlet. And it has to do with lack of trust. It has to do with worry and fear. And until you look at it, you're going to bounce back and forth to these different things. You're going to keep buying air fresheners and air fresheners and air fresheners this entire time and wondering why none of it works. Is because we're not looking at the right thing.
Right. You truly are an empowerment coach, because in these situations where with emotional eating, these, people who really, I hate to use the word crutch, but it's kind of, like you've explained, it's kind of that crutch that they use. Like, this is this thing that's being put upon me, but you're kind of going, no, we've got to own the situation, because if we can't own the situation, then we can't accept the fact that no one else might be coming to save us. Like, we have to take action for ourselves as well and own that part and be kind of the own hero in our movie, so to speak. And so that's a huge step. So if you guys didn't catch that whole part, like, you've got to own the situation. That's the initial stage of this. I mean, do you feel like that's correct in your assessment there, JJ?
Yeah. Nobody can make you feel anything. Maybe I should have started that way. Nobody can make you feel anything ever, even if they're yelling at you. So I've been teaching this. Doug and I've been teaching this when we have sort of customer service clients and stuff, and it's always fun to get them in that aha moment of like, huh? And they're like, okay, well, I get that personally, or professionally, but what about personally? What if someone's really mean to you? And I said, okay, well, and then we go through the process and they go, oh, okay. There's a movie that we watched. It was a Netflix movie. I think it was called Anniversary. And it was the perfect, like, I love watching shows that can like give me a visual that I can say, like I said to Doug, do you remember that character? There was one character, the main guy, and he and his girlfriend had broken up on their anniversary, and they were both trying to figure out if they're going to stay together. And then she called him, and then he was in a real good business meeting with this woman, this model who owned this t-shirt company. And she was very stoic, and she was very, like, you might say she was kind of snobby. She was just stoic. She just didn't want to play with them. And she wasn't like nice, but she was to the point and direct. She was a business owner. Anyway, so he was all flustered in their meeting, and he's distracted, and he's getting called, and then they ruined her shirt. And she's just like solidly like not reacting. And then they meet up later, and he yells at her, I don't want to work with you. You're a biatch, blah, 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 blah. Right? He's yelling at her. And she's, again, so it didn't go well, did it? And it was the perfect scene to show people that you don't have to react. When people are yelling, like, she knew in that moment that he was upset about what had happened with his girlfriend. It had nothing, or even though he was yelling at her and saying he did all these like mean things to her, she knew had nothing to do with her. And she was solid enough to not care. So it didn't bother her at all. You feel hurt for 2 reasons. One, you respect that person and you somehow agree with them. So if they're saying something mean to you, because think about a situation where someone has said something to you that you don't agree with, it doesn't land the same way. Someone can say to you, you're not a nice person. And you can think, no, I really am a nice person. And you go, I wonder why they think that. Right. And I can be in observer mode and not be triggered by that. But anytime someone says something that triggers you, your wound is already inside. And all they did was show you that you agree with that or that you have a wound to heal. So we're constantly a reflection of what's going on internally. People are just mirrors for you. So what would, none of us, even if someone says, I want to hurt you, where's that coming from? If someone says, I want to hurt you, you know that that's because they're hurt, right? So no one is literally waking up every day saying, who can I be mean to today to hurt their feelings? Like no one is that, like everyone is self-centered enough to care more about how they feel than about how other people feel. And then maybe some Scorpios might be, that person hurt me, how can I hurt them back? But the whole point is because I think I'll feel better because my feelings are hurt. So the first thing is that no one can make, even I know under the worst of circumstances, trust me, no one can make you feel anything. Does that mean you don't have compassion for people? Of course not. But when it comes to the things that you can control, you cannot control someone else's thoughts, someone else's beliefs, someone else's behavior, someone else's reactions, or someone else's actions. But you can control 100% how you hear something, how you interpret it, how you feel about it. You can control how you feel about it because the feelings come from the interpretation. But most people don't give themselves the time to recognize that you're telling yourself a story. It happens so quickly that you don't even realize you're telling yourself a story. And I can pretty much guarantee that 99.9% of the time, your story's wrong. Like it's not, you've made it up. You have made the whole thing up based on your beliefs, past experiences, because it's just what we do. So nobody can make you feel anything. You can, it's not control like in a stuff it way. Control meaning you can decide. You can just decide to interpret it a different way. Tell yourself a story that feels better instead of defaulting to a story that feels bad. And that is where you have complete power interpretations in how you're hearing it, and then in your belief. Let's even like raise up higher in your belief about the whole thing. And if you are someone who wants to give your power away because it's what you understand, it's what you've seen, your parents do it, it logically makes sense to you, I'm just here to tell you that's fine. That is your choice. Just recognize it's a choice and know that when you choose to be a victim of a circumstance or of somebody else's behavior, you will never feel good in that situation because it's only two choices, guys. It's I'm a victim of circumstance or I create my own reality. End of story. That's only two choices you have. There's not like a little bit of both. Now, situationally, it might be that in one situation you feel empowered and in one situation you feel disempowered. But you could recognize that if you're deciding that you have nothing to do with this and that person did it to you, you're never going to feel good. And the cycle is going to continue with feeling bad and then wanting to numb the feeling bad and then emotionally eating to make it go away, even though it doesn't go away ever. So again, we just start the cycle and the yo-yo dieting of I'm going to go on a cleanse, I'm going to go on a detox, but yet I'm not going to change anything about how I think or feel. And then we're going to go right back to the same cycle again and again.
Yeah. Yep. So what would you say, like, let's say, I kind of want to put our students into action a little bit here. Let's say that somebody watching us right now, they got let go at their job today. Like today, it just happened. And normally they would turn to food. So if they're talking to you right now, what's the first thing that we need to be thinking about right now?
So what I find is a really empowering question, because I know that I'm the creator of my own reality, is I ask myself, how did I attract this? If I'm to be really honest, how did I attract this? I have a really good friend who used to follow sort of things I told her before the podcast, or maybe early on in the podcast. She was kind of my archetype until because she was really unhappy at her job. And then she manifested getting fired. And of course, that felt bad at first. And she called crying. And I said, Susan, you totally attracted this. You hate your job. It sucks the life out of you every day. You secretly want to not quit. So how else could you get out of the situation ahead of the game? Well, you get fired, because then you get workers' comp. Then you get a buyout at the end. So you still have money and a little bit of to go find what you really want to do. And you are lacking confidence to do what you really want to do and giving excuses why it can't work. And basically you co-created that something bad had to happen to push you into action. So you get the choice of I'm fired. And again, I'm not saying don't feel, I was just telling the story yesterday to a client about like when my first book, the first book I was supposed to ever have, it was a deal with a publisher that wanted me to write. It was a NAC Absolute Abs book. And it was originally supposed to be published in December of 2010. And I got a call in July of 2010 and they said, you know what, we've got good news and bad news. Which do you want first? And I was like, I don't know. Okay. What's the good news? The good news is that we're going to keep your book. And I'm like, okay, well, you've already kind of paid me for it. So good. And then the next one was, but we can't publish it for another like 8 months after the original date, which was August of 2011. And I had this whole marketing plan. I had like a video I was going to shoot to sell. I had everything in place because again, it's July. So I was gearing up to do like a show. This is before my podcast, to do this online video show series with a DVD and programs. And anyway, I was going to spend a lot of money on trying to make it a bestseller. And so when it happened, it felt bad. I was sad. I was very frustrated. So I cried and I got mad about it. So I'm not saying stuff your feelings and instantaneously like deny any negative feelings. I cried. I was mad. But then after I cried, after I sort of emotionally detoxed and I let it all out, think of a baby, right? Like when a baby wants something, there's a point in which the baby like gets tired of crying. The baby's like, okay, I'm done now, right? That's what adults really should incorporate. You should get to the point where you cry or scream until you're done. Just let it out until you're done. And you go, okay, I'm done now. Okay. So I cried until I was done. And I said, okay, why did I attract this? What's the silver lining here? Well, the silver lining was that book was a freaking app. I want it. I told my agent, I don't want this. Can we turn this into a different book? No. They really want this book. And this would be good for you because, you know, you're getting paid to write it and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and it'd be and I'm like, oh, like it was so painful to write because it was really I'm like, it's so not like me. I mean, it's a picture book. It's pretty and it's useful. I care, you know, I don't care that what someone's external looks like to judge them based on anyway, because very attractive, very fit people can be the most depressed, unhappy people, biggest addicts in the world. So the two do not correlate. So anyway, so I thought, what do I do with this situation? And so then after I cried and I was done, I was like, oh, I was about to ready to spend like $5,000 on trying to make that book a bestseller. And all of a sudden I thought, no. And if I sold 1 million copies, I'd make no more money. So I'm like, here's a perfect opportunity for me to write a different book, one that actually really is my story. And that if I spend $5,000 on promoting it and I sell 1 million copies, I make more money. Isn't that smarter? So I did that. So I wrote Fit to Love. That's when Fit to Love was born, was because this other book. And of course that was a game changer for me. So, you know, it's happening. It's the belief that your life happens for you, not against you. And to find the reason why, and to be honest about maybe you got fired because your performance at that job was subpar because you truly don't like it. You don't want it, but maybe you haven't had the nerve or the confidence to say, you know what? I don't like this and I want to do something else. Maybe you're so afraid of the next step for yourself that you just stayed complacent, but your soul knew better and says, no, you hate this. It is sucking the life out of you. So you either performed in a way that got you fired or you just manifested getting fired. So be upset about it and create a plan. But I promise if you got fired today and you're upset about it, let yourself be upset, but I promise it's for your good and something better is going to come out of this. Maybe not right away, but ultimately, this is pushing you in the direction that you really want.
Professor JJ Flizanes. That was awesome, my friend. You always bring so much energy and value to topics, and I'm so glad that we got connected for this, for the Million Pound Mission University. I just appreciate you, my friend. This has been awesome. This is, like I said at the beginning, this is an issue that so many people deal with, and I knew that you were the right person for the job on this one. So hopefully you guys that are watching, I'll post all kinds of information below the video on how to connect with JJ. She has 3,000 different podcasts that you can listen to. She's got books. She's got all kinds of stuff. I'll get all the links because you know, if you watched all the way through on this one, you most likely want a little bit more JJ Flizanes. So I'll post below and you guys can dig in and go a little bit deeper into the JJ Flizane's tunnel of awesomeness, and you won't regret it. So, JJ, thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Adam.